It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
I love the part where we start dimensionalizing, and that there are these.
What does that mean?
Well, the honestly, from my perspective, it's these stages of awareness of expanding into more and more possibility, and hitting points where we sort of graduate from one perspective to a broader perspective of what's possible, of who we are, moving into a relationship with life where we're operating more on the frequency level, and that we're aware of what's showing up in our experience. We're aware of what it's reflecting back to us, what it's mirroring back to us. We have a level of personal ownership, and we have some ability to navigate through this. So we are not at the effect of something that seemingly is coming at us. We are aware that we're generating it, and we have a level of personal ownership of what's being generated that empowers us. And things get to be true and not true at the same time. You know, it moves from that either or to a both and paradigm, where we really have an awareness of the dimensionality of our experience, or the complexity of our experience, and the contradictions and the paradox.
It's a good thing I know what you're talking about.
It's a good thing.
Thank goodness.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know.
It's like
Barnett's going to explain it for you,
like a Twilight Zone
in one sentence.
No, I know exactly. It's a good thing I know what you're talking about. One sentence. We're moving through a hall of mirrors.
That's it.
We're moving through a hall of mirrors, and these frequencies that Arjuna was talking about, that we talk about frequently, they are related to. They are expressions of choices that we're making, that we're turning our little calibrators to, our dials to. And the dial turning mechanism, that is our beliefs and our choices and our thoughts and our decisions and our feelings. And between these thoughts and feelings, there are so many of them, and they butt up against each other, and they fold back on each other, and they interact with each other, and they create harmonics with each other and complexities with each other, all of which take expression in form. And then they get so complex and intricate that we lose sight that we're looking into a mirror. So as you were saying, we begin to make a life's practice of using the hall of mirrors as a feedback system.
That's it.
And one piece by one piece, we take responsibility. We learn to respond to the mirroring.
To what's showing up in our experience.
And to learn how to process the reflection.
That's it.
To recognize ourselves in it. And to acknowledge ourselves into it.
To generate a frequency. You were speaking about this energetic qualities, the love that we want to, as we move into compassion.
To be aware of the frequencies that we are generating consciously, because we're always generating them anyway.
Well, that's true. See, now that's true, but there is an intentionality, a way of moving into. So, let's go back to the very beginning of this conversation. Saturday night, we're going to this event, and the intention is to connect. That's the only intention I was working with, just that I wanted to generate connections, and I did. And don't get me wrong, I heard from all the trailing bits. I saw other things reflected in my hall of mirrors, and to the degree I was aware of them and was able to own them, I knew what was going on. But the quality of experience that I was intending to generate, I was able to generate. And more and more, I'm able to do that in my life, and I find it tremendously rewarding that I can own what shadow pieces show up, but I can also generate through this intent, through a held, again, it's not the outcome, it's the quality that I want to generate in relationship with my wife and my friends, and more, that's becoming real and realized in the expressions that I see.
So as Arjuna was saying, there is this paradox, one of many. As we become more practiced in recognizing and owning and and releasing, and then having a new forgiving where necessary the self and the reflections, and then creating new choice. As we become more adept and masterful at that magic. It's magic.
It is magic.
As we become more adept as magicians. I agree with you. I have the same experience. Your life, my life, people's lives, they begin to flow more elegantly, more magically, less less rigidly aligned to the kind of playbook of rules that I grew up with. Facts are facts, and just gets a lot more loosey-goosey and fluid. And at the same time, what is dawning in me, and I know in you because we've had this conversation, is the awareness that you become more and more fluid in it, and own more and more and understand more and more, not as a from a heart place, not as a intellectual understanding, drops into the heart, that I am the whole thing, and I may or may not, I don't know this from this perspective, but it is very possible that I will not clean it all up, even though it's all me, and that it's not necessary to clean it all up, but what's necessary is that I am moving more flowingly through it, and I'm developing the heart capacity to love all the trailing bits, the internal fragments, as well as the external fragments that are sharing the illusion in sort of in the same drama as I am. Just to be able to have the heart to say, it's okay. It's all developmental. I think this might have been what was referred to in the Easter story, as we're coming to that time, when Christ says, "Forgive them; they know not what they do."
Yeah, that's the line on the cross.
This is a self-forgiving. This is a forgiving of others with the awareness that others are the self.
The selves. The selves.
This is that's great distinction. It's the selves forgiving.
Because it's an inclusion of the selves. One of the things...
It's all one body.
I even want to refer to last week's show with Tom Shadyac, and the part of the movie that both of us really appreciated, and you're actually the one that mentioned it on air with Tom, where his father comes on and plays that role of kind of... facts are facts, and this is the way of the world, son. In spite of the fact that he created this incredible St. Jude's Hospital, that he did these amazing things in his lifetime, he still was crunching it back to an insolvable. There's this insolvable thing. And Tom didn't kill him for having that opinion. He didn't. He allowed that to be a certain reality, and he simply held his own reality, or his own frequency, if you will. And the two existed simultaneously.
And they're all developmental expressions of us. I have developmental expressions of me that run through my life in the form of dogs and cats and trees and rocks, and they are certainly not aware of holding me with conscious awareness and a compassionate heart,
right?
Much less the part of me that is easily incensed and driven to rage by, to road rage and stuff, and it has the tendency to kind of get all hooked into that. Much less the part of me that can get triggered by shoulda, coulda, wouldas in the world. Sure. All of these things are developmental, and they are all okay. And my dog will not become Einstein just because I have more lights on.
And they're all reflections. I mean, that's the big piece, because, and I don't want to keep beating this up because we keep going back to it, that with these things we see in the out there and we point to and we get really hooked in terms of, some purpose that, everyone's got to listen, everyone's got to do this. That the degree we just see it as an expression of a part of us, the more we become empowered to respond to it.
And we don't have to like it. We're not advocating that anybody likes it or that anybody rolls over or that anybody. But we are saying nothing changes until we do.
Yeah, and look, it's just an empowered response. So when something shows up, let's say as an injustice in the world, that we personalize that we own it. It allows us to respond to it. Here's the way I've described this in the past. When someone has been victimized and they have this desire to go out now and help victims, right? They've been victimized and they want to rush out and help victims. And they have this whole orientation towards helping people who've been victimized because they've been victimized. And they haven't...
The dingo conversation.
And they haven't really worked it out. They haven't really worked it out. What they end up doing is they end up going in and locking in place the victim-perpetrator paradigm. They haven't moved through it.
The victim-perpetrator frequency you're talking about, to loop back to what Arjuna was
right.
was
So what happens is it's a never-ending cycle. There's no perspective. There's nothing that breaks that paradigm. It's simply a repeating. So if I have something that's unresolved in my own experience and I go rushing out to solve it in the external world, I'm just adding fuel to the fire. I'm just perpetuating it. There's no interruption. The minute I own it personally, the minute I start to see it all reflected back personally, and I become empowered in what's showing up for me, now I have something to offer to someone that's been victimized, because I'm not buying into the victim perpetrator. I understand it from a larger perspective, higher perspective, this kind of other dimensional perspective, and I actually see them as me, by the way.
And now you're able to...
Now I'm effective.
You're an effective agent for change because you are approaching it with compassion and understanding and love, even if that love is tough love.
Exactly.
Even if that love
Whatever
is self-protective
like,
love.
It's going to be appropriate.
Yes.
It's going to be appropriate because I've owned it. I've owned it as a reflection of me. Now I'm effective in the quote-unquote world. I mean, the truth is I'm interacting with my experience in a constructive way.
In a constructive way and not in a shadow. We're talking light shadow as opposed to dark shadow. Yeah. We can always tell. I shouldn't say we. I can only speak for me. I can always tell when I am being triggered at a shadow level and wanting to react as opposed to respond.
That's right.
And when I am reacting, there is a shrillness to me.
There is. There's a shrillness to me too. I'll mirror that, and this has happened to me recently. I recently got triggered by something. It's actually a conversation on Facebook. I won't say the conversation because we don't need to go into because then people will get all fired up about their part of the conversation. Who cares? I got triggered and I jumped in, and in the middle I recognized this is a shadow play. It's the same thing. I'm feeding the fire. I'm perpetuating it as a held reality. When a part of me, the part of me that's got the wisdom and has evolved enough to see it in this mirror context. And I go, oh,
so where do we do that? In the micro, we also do it in the macro.
That's
we
it.
Look to sort of, we deal with terror with force and with terror.
Yeah, of course.
Not to say that it's inappropriate to deal with terror with force. It's far be it from me to make proclamations about whether deadly force is appropriate or inappropriate. You deal with terror however it needs to be dealt with, as long as you are not dealing with terror out of exactly the same energy. You're just making a standing wave. You deal with the terror out of an understanding and a compassion for this is a developmental place. And not to say that if you don't have a mad dog, you don't contain that mad dog. However, and sometimes it needs to be put down. Yeah. But it is done from
what it is.
It is not done from as a reaction. It's done as a response.
That's it.
But this is a challenging road of discovery and illumination and enlightenment, and we are all on it. Along our individual paths and in our collective paths, and we begin to see more clearly ourselves and each other and the way our society functions through these lenses, out of this wisdom.
We become the awakened dreamer.